Suratul Imran, chapter number 3. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم. So we start with Surah Imran now, which is chapter number 3 of the Quran. But before we actually begin a discussion or a brief and rapid explanation of this surah, let me give you some information about this particular surah. Now, I think I have stated during our introduction perhaps that something, uh, the Makki Madani surahs, which we discussed towards the end of Surah Al-Baqarah as well. Now, the first logical group, if you remember, there are 7 groups in the Quran, Makki Madani groups. So one group, in each group, there are some Makki surahs and some Madani surahs. So the first group actually consists of 5 surahs, one of which is Makki, Surah Al-Fatiha, and the rest of the 4 in this group, that is Madani. Baqarah, Imran, Nisa, and Maida. These are 4 surahs, chapter number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Baqarah, Imran, Nisa, and Maida. These are Madani surahs, and this will complete group 1, the first group basically. Now, these and many of the surahs in the Quran are in the form of pairs. Surah Baqarah and Surah Imran form one such pair. So they form a pair of surahs. And not all surahs are in pairs. Some of them are unique, some of them are standalone, all by itself. But many of the surahs in the Quran are in pairs. Baqarah and Imran is one such example. So the reasons why they are pairs, we cannot go into the details of each and every aspect because this is intended to be a brief and rapid explanation of the surah. We are not even doing it from Arabic, but directly from the English translation. So for that we can actually have a separate session if we intend to go over the entire Quran for a detailed explanation from the Arabic itself, and we can spend some more time on it. But in this series, our intention is to have a very brief and rapid explanation of the entire surah. So much for the information part, and we proceed with the surah. So as I said, the first verses are also similar in these two. That's one obvious thing that comes to our mind. Alif Lam Mim. Both the surahs start with Alif Lam Mim. And then it says, Allah, there is no God but He, the living, the self-subsisting, the supporter of all. It is He, then verse number 3 onwards, it is He who sent down to thee step by step in truth, the book confirming what went before it, and He sent down the Torah of Moses and the gospel of Jesus, of Musa alayhi salam and of Isa alayhi salam. Before this, as a guide to mankind. So before this means before the Quran, these 2 books were sent for the guidance of humanity, as a guide to mankind. And He sent down the criterion of judgment between right and wrong. Then those who reject faith in the signs of Allah will suffer the severest chastisement, and Allah is exalted in might, Lord of retribution. From Allah, verily, nothing is hidden on earth or in the heavens. He it is who shapes you in the wombs as He pleases. There is no God but He, the exalted in might, the wise. He it is who has sent down to thee the book. In it, a verse is basic or fundamental, clear in meaning. They are the foundation of the book. Now, actually, this verse number 7, is actually a bit complex, and the translation is not very correct. So we'll actually read the translation, and we'll come back to this verse again for a little bit of an explanation. In it, a verse is basic or fundamental, clear in meaning. They are the foundation of the book. Others are not entirely clear. But those in whose hearts is perversity follow the part thereof that is not entirely clear, seeking discord and searching for its interpretation. But this is the part which is actually not very accurate in its translation. But no one knows its true meanings It's actually got to do with some grammar and some punctuation marks. And punctuation marks was never a part of the Quran. It's the diacritical marks that I'm referring to. The vowel sounds are also not part of the Quran. I mean, to the Arab, it comes to them naturally. They don't need these vowel sounds to pronounce the word. We, who are non-Arabs, whose mother tongue is not Arabic, they would find it difficult to pronounce certain words, and we need these vowel marks. For example, I'll tell you about an experiment which has been performed. For example, we use the language, English language. It has been observed that if a particular word is rearranged in a way that the first letter and the last letter, the first alphabet and the last alphabet in that word is kept the same, but the letters inside, the alphabets inside are jumbled up, even then we find no difficulty at all in reading the word, because our brain functions very differently. It does not interpret each alphabet, each letter of the word, and then assign the meaning. It takes in the word as a whole for processing. And if the brain can process, it can interpret, it can deduce the meaning. So this has been observed because we're familiar with the English language. Uh, it's not just about a word. There was an entire passage, and amazingly, people could read it, and each word in that passage was jumbled. Only the first letter and the last letter were kept at their position. The rest of the letters inside the words were completely jumbled up. Yet, for the English speaking audience, they found it no difficulty. They did not find it any difficult, not find it difficult at all. They found it quite easy, in fact, to read through the entire passage. So similarly is the case with Arabic. They will not need the diacritical marks. They will not need the vowel sound. They will not need the punctuation. They know how to read it, how to make sense of it all. So this is the passage where the translation is not very accurate, not rendered very accurate. What I'll try to do is, I think it's better to pick up the Arabic and then try to explain, but I'll try to explain it on the go as well over here, because I think this we can have a separate session to discuss this in great details. A separate session is actually very required, or would be very helpful for this verse. So let's read this part, the portion which is not very accurate, but I'll try to give the correct meaning. But no one knows its true meanings about those which are somewhat difficult. No one knows its true meanings, and then they have stopped it with except Allah. The actual, it can be rendered, at least they should have stated that this can be rendered in two different ways. And it says, and those who are firmly grounded in knowledge say we believe in it. The whole of it is from our Lord, and none will grasp the message except men of understanding. Okay, so the correct translation would be, but no one knows its true meanings except Allah and those who are firmly grounded in knowledge. So those who are firmly grounded in knowledge, they have some knowledge about these verses as well. Those verses which are mutashabihat, which are allegorical in nature, which are metaphorical in nature. So it is not, as most of the translators have done, that no one knows its true meanings except Allah. It's no one knows its true meanings except Allah and those who are firmly grounded in knowledge. I'll show you a passage from Surah Kahf. When we reach Surah Kahf, you try to remember this point. And when we reach Surah Kahf, there is a passage, a verse, a part of the verse in Surah Kahf where this meaning that I am speaking out is actually becomes very clear. And there, the translators did not just mess it around. They kept it the standard. It has been translated, and things are actually agreeing with this understanding which I'm trying to give you. And this is not something which I'm manufacturing, I'm inventing for the first time. It's not a bid'ah. You don't call what Ibn Kasir writes or our scholars in the past, stalwarts, have written and call it bid'ah. This was a standard understanding. So Ibn Kasir and others have interpreted this verse like this, also the way I'm saying to you. So no one knows its true meanings except Allah and those who are firmly grounded in knowledge. So what do you do? Now, with the correct punctuation, it does not sound illogical at all. So then from say onwards, and from say onwards, it reads say. So all of you now say, we believe in it. We believe in it. Whether you understand or do not understand, we believe in it. The whole of it is from our Lord. And then it says, and none will grasp the message except men of understanding. So why is the verse ending in this fashion? Because already it has been clarified that the men of understanding, they have some understanding of the mutashabihat verses as well. And none will grasp the message except men of understanding. Those who are actively involved in the studies, in the research, in, in studying the Quran, they will actually definitely be benefited more than those who are lazy and not putting in that much of effort. It's all got to do with the effort that we put in. It's all got to do with the studies and the research that we do. It's all got to do with our own efforts. So you don't do anything and you expect to understand everything, that's not going to happen. So this is the verse. So basically there are muhkamatun verses and the mutashabihat verses, the clear verses and the allegorical verses. And about the allegorical verses, the correct interpretation of this part of the verse is not as they have translated. What they have translated is, but no one knows its true meanings except Allah, full stop. And those who are firmly grounded in knowledge say we believe in it. Doesn't make any sense. We believe in it. The whole of it is from our Lord, and none will grasp the message except men of understanding. So the except Allah, no one knows. Even the men of understanding don't know. Then why does the verse end that none will grasp the message except men of understanding? It's obvious that the men of understanding, they have some knowledge of the mutashabihat verses. And the mutashabihat verses, the clear verses are very clear. That's why it's called clear verse in the first place. It's to do with hukum, the do's and don'ts, the muhkamat. It's got to do with the do's and don'ts. It's obviously going to be very clear. Do this, don't do this. This is halal, this is haram. It's obviously very clear. That's why it's called muhkamat verses. But mutashabihat verses, the classification of some verses as mutashabihat verses has not been uniform throughout the history of the Muslim Ummah. It has not. Previously, there were more verses which were classified as mutashabihat verses, allegorical verses, um, metaphorical verses, ambiguous verses, unclear verses. Why? Because they did not have the necessary understanding of that verse. For example, those verses pertaining to physics, those verses pertaining to biology, things like that. This was not very clear. And as and when we made scientific progress as a community, in fact, as a humanity, we got to understand more and more. We understood more and more of these things. And so these verses, which were speaking about physics, about biology, etc., began to become more and more clear to all of us. So these were no more being classified as mutashabihat verses. This was no more in that categorization, because these are now clear. We do understand the physics of it. We do understand the biology of it. We do understand the embryology. We do understand geography. We understand so many things now. So this mutashabihat verses is not constant. The classification of some verse into the mutashabihat category is not constant. It's never been constant. So to rephrase the translation as this is not correct. The correct translation would be, but no one knows its true meanings except Allah and those who are firmly grounded in knowledge, full stop. So the say is the general statement, not just referring to the people who are firmly grounded in knowledge. So it's for all of us to say. Say, we believe in it, the whole of it is from our Lord, and none will grasp the message except men of understanding. So this is the correct translation of this particular verse. Okay, let's proceed. Our Lord, they say, let not our hearts deviate now after thou hast guided us, but grant us mercy from thee, for thou art the granter of bounties without measure. Our Lord, thou art he that will gather mankind together against a day about which there is no doubt, for Allah never fails in His promise. So this brings us to the end of section 1 of Surah Imran, which we have started today. So we discussed about the last part of Surah Baqarah today, and we have started with Surah Imran today. So let's stop uh, at this point, and inshallah we can continue with Surah Imran. Let's see, either today or maybe tomorrow. Let's see. So that's it for this session at least.